and welcome back to the channel. Right, so in today's video we're going to be talking about Isophyne, breaking down her abilities and giving my own thoughts and opinions about how she will incorporate herself in the contest. So, she's the first idol champion that we're going to see. We are promised or guaranteed to receive 3 more of these champions, and they are going to be basically signaled with, well, being Kabam originals, being fairly unique with their fractured power bar, and then we're going to see whether there is some other trend. So Isophyne is the living isosphere. Obviously we're not going to read the entire description, but the point being is that Kabam is giving her 4 in damage and 4 in ease of use, so that is quite good. 3 in survivability just means that, you know, you can't take too many hits with her. Utility 3, but again that can kind of be misleading because a champion can have 5 in utility, but if the champion does not answer the problems that the contest currently needs, all of those 5 points are quite useless. And then we have the defender strength 2.5, so not necessarily a particularly great defender according to Kabam. So her mechanics, Kit revolves around 2 primary mechanics: ego management and special attack management with the fractured power bar. Ego is gained by gaining bars of power as well as nullifying buffs of the opponent. As for Isophyne's specials, Special 1 will inflict energy vulnerabilities that will power up both Special 2 and Special 3 for giant damage. Set up multiple level 1s before going in for your damage of source of the choice. So she's going to be a Mystic Champion with power gain, ego, energy vulnerability, and wither degeneration. So ego is her own unique mechanic, and we're going to read how you gain it, but yeah, it's basically filling bars of power. So the strengths, large amounts of power. Isophyne is granted rank 3 Mystic Dispersion and is also rewarded with power even when the opponent does not have buffs active. This means that they will gain a certain amounts of power throughout the fight. So I do enjoy myself a spammy special attack champion. However, there is one very odd thing that Kabam kind of mentioned in her abilities at the end, that recommended masteries would be double edge. If you spam special attacks, you really do not want double edge. But let's get back to the business. So, fractured power bar. With all this power comes new and unique opportunities for Isophyne to throw a large quantity of specials in any order they want. This grants them a ton of fight control while special activation when needed. Also, just a side note, I know that they are using they-them pronouns as it's all the fab these days, but for the most part I will be referring to Isophyne as a she, because it does appear to be a feminine character of nature. So if you do have a problem with that, well, I'm sure Isophyne doesn't, as she is a fictional character anyhow. So Isophyne nullifies buffs at 35% on both her light attacks and her opponents. With the amount of buffs nullified and the base chance increased throughout their kit, this is an incredibly simple yet powerful tool to shut down cosmic threats old and new. That Nullify is actually one of the most exciting things, because typically when champions do have Nullify, it's very rarely that it is such a simple Nullify to access. This is very similar to Juggernaut's Nullify effectively, where you just hit the opponent and you're going to be nullifying buffs. There is an RNG element to it, and you kind of need to be on your guard, especially like with Juggernaut, not to push yourself to level 3 for instance. But with Isophyne, that shouldn't really be an issue because you do have the fractured power bar. So weakness, time. Isophyne requires an aggressive playstyle in order to take advantage of her damage, or else her they don't even know what their pronouns are. Okay, fine, whatever. Is that a typo or a slip up? Or a proof that this is whatever. You see, the people writing these articles confuse themselves, so whatever. Her damage, or else her ego passives and energy vulnerabilities can fall off. When fighting against the opponent that slow down Isophyne's tempo, they may struggle to deal effective damage. She can struggle to deal effective damage. Man, I really hate this whole... Okay, whatever. Anyways, so she is a tempo character. So you need to be able to gain bars of power quickly and activate them. And champions that, you know, force you to slow play might be quite bad matchups against her. Also, champions with very long special attack animations and special spamming champions could be quite bad for her to deal with. So, you know, for instance, Onslaught might not necessarily be the best target, because often you end up, you know, spending quite a lot of fight time indexing those specials. Nullify immune. Against Nullify immune champions, Isophyne cannot trigger her power gain, either from Mystic Dispersion or from the lack of buffs. This completely shuts down her damage due to the fact that they cannot keep energy vulnerabilities active on her opponent. Fair enough. So abilities. Finally, the nitty-bitty grid. Yes. Mystic Idol Physiology, always active. Isophyne is a Mystic Idol and thus has a fractured power bar and is immune to bleed, cold snap, and frostbite. So that's a decent set of immunities. Isophyne's mystical physiology causes her attacks to deal energy damage, so she will immediately be a core counter by default, and she benefits from rank 3 of the Mystic Dispersion Mastery when it is not activated. However, her combat power rate is reduced by 25%. It's fairly standard. Both champions' light attacks have a 35% chance to nullify one buff on Isophyne's opponent. If the opponent has a pierce effect active, this becomes 70% chance to nullify. So this effectively is going to be one of the things that does give you a defensive issue. My hair's all messed up because of the hat again, but because Isophyne, well, she's going to be nullifying your buffs as you hit her. So any champions with buffs active will be not only getting their own abilities disrupted, they're also going to be giving Isophyne a ton of MD, Mystical Dispersion, and power. So anybody with buffs is going to be quite bad against fighting her, but that in itself isn't like a big deal for a defender. Whenever any Isophyne's personal nullify abilities activate, but the opponent does not have any buffs active, gain an instant power gain granting 10% of a bar of power or 3.5% as a defender. So this again is going to be letting her to gain power even when opponents do not have buffs. So that's quite good failsafe for Mystic champions. Ever-evolving Ego. Ego passive lasts for 3.5 seconds and expire one at a time. Pause during special attacks, max stacks 10. Gain 2 Ego passives whenever Isophyne crosses the bar of power. Gain 1 Ego passive whenever Isophyne nullifies a buff. So typically, you will want to be gaining as much power as fast as you can, being as aggressive as you can, and thus, building up your ego. Ego effects. Ego passives grant Isophyne the following effects: 777 attack rating, which is about, I think, 18 or 20% fury, and energy resistance, which is not a large amount. Special attack 1, Iso Harvest. The first hit inflicts 477 energy vulnerability passive for 14 seconds. Paused during special attacks and strikers. When activated while about 2 bars of power, an additional energy vulnerability is inflicted, max 8. So you can stack up to 8 energy vulnerabilities, and thanks to the fractured power bars, the idea is that you get above 2 bars of power and then drop your level 1. Additionally, the final hit nullifies 2 buffs on the opponent, so it's effectively a ramp up special. Ramp up your damage, gain your ego quicker if opponents have buffs, nullify a couple of those, gain more power, throw it out about more. Special 2. Final hit inflicts non-stacking 100% wither passive for 24 seconds, fairly substantial amount of time. While active, whenever Isophyne triggers a nullify, they trigger an additional nullify. That's kind of cool. If activated after hitting the opponent's block with a medium or light attack, this special becomes passively unblockable. That's quite useful, so you do not need to find an extra opening. Quite good. And for each ego passive active on Isophyne, she gains 924 fury passive for the duration of the special attack. That is on top of the attack boost that she gets from the ego itself. So that can result in a fairly substantial amount of damage, hopefully. And special attack 3, something that we're probably going to use quite rarely. Inflict non-stacking degeneration passive, dealing 27,000 damage over 35 seconds. Pause during special attacks. This damage is increased by 10% for each personal energy vulnerability passive on the opponent. While this degeneration passive is active, Isophyne Special 1 inflicts an additional energy vulnerability passive. Overall, again, I don't think it's particularly useful, significant, or needed, special effect in her core loop. It's going to be level 1, depending on the fight, of the length of the fight, and just level 2 and finish. Signature ability. Isophyne will not let her cosmic threats escape their fate. When a cosmic opponent's health drops below 10%, inflict an indefinite 125% marked passive. Marked passive effectively makes sure what's dead stays dead and disables like indestructibles, immortalities, and alike. So that would shut down Hercules, that would shut down Serpent and Hela, but nobody cares about those. Everybody really cares about Serpent. That is one of the biggest dislikes I have of the character on the initial glance. The reason why people are looking forward to Isophyne, primarily, majority of the reason why people want this character is that she's a Serpent counter. However, similar to the Dazzler, which also Kabam made easier to acquire, it's the same case where there's always a caveat. You'd absolutely love to get a free Serpent counter as a 7-star, but you need to get her duped, right, in order for that to actually work. At least, unlike Dazzler against Bullseye, you just need to get the dupe. So if you do have a Mystic Awakening gem, that's very, very, very good for you, and she will become a Serpent counter. The question is whether she will be like fast enough for that to be like one of the better options, or better than, let's say, Spiral, Chavez, or Kushala in generic metas, and how much block damage you're gonna end up taking, because, you know, characters like Chavez, for instance, avoid taking block damage by, you know, completely managing the power of Serpent, and you barely let him throw any special attacks and then cover it with healing and willpower. Kushala has mechanics that reduce the amount of block damage you're taking. Spiral, obviously, is a custom design countered Serpent. She doesn't quite have that, and the question is going to be, yes, definitely, you know, how much damage you're taking from Serpent's specials as you're ramping her up. So it's going to be very, very important. So as far as I see it right now, I don't think she's going to be the top Serpent counter due to that. As an attacker, activating a special attack grants Isophyne a non-stacking regeneration passive, healing 0.3 to 0.6% of missing health for each ego passive of 4 seconds. And again, this modern trend that gives regeneration based on missing health is a significantly gimped version of regeneration when it comes to the competitive play. These abilities typically are good for like questing scenarios when you're nearly KO'd and then you can regen significant amounts. But for stuff like Battlegrounds, and I know that everybody's not focused on the Battlegrounds, these healing effects are borderline useless, because when you're at 95% health, you hardly regen anything. And that is, you know, what kind of matters the most when you finish with as high health bar as possible. So I do not place much value in this. And Isophyne starts each fight with a power gain passive, granting 33% till 99% of bar power over 10 seconds. And you know, that's good. That's just speed up the character. That is a good ability. But overall, I would say, you know, Sig won her, and you probably have better champions to use your signature stones on, because I do not find much value in that healing at all whatsoever. This is good, but I'm not necessarily sure it would be worth it, and this ability works from Sig level 1. Right. Synergy bonuses. I'm not going to break down all of them, but basically they're solid, you know. This one helps out Gladiator a bit, ramping up faster. Isophyne starts with 4 ego, and her max ego is increased by 2. This one's good for like longer fights, because, you know, you're already 40% ramped up basically, and your max damage cap is increased as well. So this is a solid synergy. Activating special 1 and 3 bars power, inflicts 3 energy vulnerabilities. This is also solid for Isophyne, because, you know, you just ramp up faster. For Gwenpool, this could be interesting, because, you know, having these 5 Furies active could significantly increase her damage. So I think this is actually quite good synergy for Gwenpool. It's a shame that synergies don't really matter much in the game anymore. Spot synergy, I think it's take it or leave it. Adol's, whenever a personal immunity triggers, gain 8% Fury passive for 12 seconds. I don't think this is particularly significant, and this I don't think is particularly significant for Aegon either. And all champions gain 5% ability power. Neat. Obviously, Mystic Dispersion is still recommended. So overall, I think I don't want to be overhyped, because again, I think she will be a solid Serpent counter. I think, you know, she'll get the job done, and when you will draft Isophyne, you will be able to destroy, you know, Serpent in most metas. However, there are a couple points of worry because in some metas she might not even be able to work well enough either, because you do have that wither only on the level 2, and you typically will not want to throw the level 2 until much later in the fight once you're fully ramped up. So that makes that wither kind of like less reliable or less present in the fight, and that is when you really get the control over those power gaining champions. And then obviously there's the block damage, how much you're gonna end up taking on your way to having ramped up. So like my expectation fully is that Isophyne is less likely to be top 3 Serpent counter. I do think she's gonna be like top 4, 5, or 6. I think Spiral's probably gonna be better for Serpent. I think Chavez is still gonna be better for Serpent. I think arguably Kushala is better for Serpent, and possibly Shatra, pending the metas on the latter two. As well as, maybe White Tiger. White Tiger is a bit finicky fight, but White Tiger is definitely a solid Serpent counter too. That said, I think she's going to do the job. If you do not have too many Serpent counters, or you always want more, I think she's going to do a good job. I think she's going to be quite capable against most of the Cosmic champions. I think ironically she's also going to be very, very good against tech champions, because if you look at the tech class, just about all of them, or many of them, do have that buff for Isophyne to Nullify that keeps returning. And when you look at which champions you typically would see somewhere, Fam, unfortunately, Nullifying his buff's not great though. But you still do have your Guardian that often goes in defense. Sometimes Iron Man goes in defense. Or Warlock. The Red Skull is Nullify immune though, so that would kind of suck. So she could be decently good against some of the tech champions as well. Mutants, not too many that primarily passives. And that's another kind of key question, like how many out of the top champions, top defenders in the game she would be good for. Obviously Science class should be the weakness of her, and she's probably going to be worried about that. We do not expect her to be good against like Photon and things. Then in skill class we have Korg, which I think she should be able to deal fine with, even though she probably would be slow-ish, but you don't need to worry about the damage back because you do energy damage, stuff like that. I think she would be decent against Kingpin. Killmonger, again, it's like fairly average, manageable fight, but again, there's no buffs to help her. I don't think she's going to be particularly great against Atuma, and I don't think she's going to be particularly great against Bullseye either, despite being bleed immune, because she would need to maintain tempo, which she cannot. I think she might be solid against Nick Fury because there are some buffs involved, and she does have the Nullify to help her, and you can be quite aggressive in that fight. So somehow, again, here, I don't think she's going to be the best Onslaught counter, for instance, because obviously Onslaught forces you out of a fast tempo. Maybe, I bet it's positive during special attacks, so maybe it'd be fine against Onslaught. Sinister, you do rely on crits primarily for damage, so I doubt it's going to be particularly amazing against Sinister. I don't know, we have to see, but will be interesting to see where she lands. I'm going to put it like that. I am cautiously optimistic. I am not like overhyped or over the moon about her either thus far. I think she's going to be solid. However, not with too many uses, there to speak. Obviously, this is all purely theoretical. We still need to test out the champion, play with her. But I do think it's kind of ironic that Isophyne does have a fractured power bar, but they have given her a specific ramp up where you need to throw, let's say, if you want to fully ramp her up, you need to throw basically like 4 level 1s, and then you can go for level 2 for damage. And that kind of defeats the purpose of having the fractured power bar. I think that the idea would be that you can, choose a tool for the job. If you can use your level 1, 2, or 3 at any given time. But Kabam has, made her effectively barely any different than any other regular champion that has a ramp up. You know, if you're playing, for instance, Penny Parker, you need to throw 1 or 2 level 1s and then go for level 2 because that's the damage rotation. And the same thing kind of goes with Isophyne as well. If you want, you know, to do the damage rotation, you need to spam your level 1s and then go for level 2. So Fractured Power Bar, it's new to the game, but it's not implemented in a way that I would have thought they would. Let me know what you guys think. There is, again, plenty of positives about the champion, plenty of things to look forward to, plenty of caveats and things that I'm not a particularly big fan of. So, are you hyped for Isophyne? And I'll catch you guys later. Bye-bye. Hello there guys, and welcome back to the channel. So we have all the information about